the worst kept secret in organizations across the world, but it's true and it's time to talk about it. I'm referring to the gender pay gap that the World Economic Forum says it's so bad it will take 257 years to close it. Let that sink in. It will take 257 years for men and women to get paid the same for the same work. Gender pay gap is essentially when a woman gets paid less for just being a woman. The entertainment industry is notorious for it. That's the one we all know about. And many times, large corporations have vowed to have equal pay for equal work. But the ugly truth is, India ranks 112 on a list of 153 countries on the Global Gender Gap Index. Some studies say women get paid as much as 34% lesser than men on an average. Despite all the awareness, the campaigns and the promises, why does this situation persist? Speaking to me now on this is Manisha Girotra, Chief Executive Officer of Moelis India, Rituparna Chakraborty, Executive Vice President and co-founder of TeamLeaves, and Pranav Haldea, MD of Prime Database. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us on this very, very important issue. Manisha, let me begin with your take. Is it true? Does the gender pay gap actually exist? And what has been your experience with it, and how have you seen it and really known about it?
Look, I think it's a reality. All the statistics you quoted are all there for us to see and assimilate. I think really the issue is that women are just not getting the frontline jobs. I think women don't get leadership jobs. Women aren't nurtured enough. There are not enough flexi hours, stay-at-home work hours that India permits and most other geographies permit. And as a result of it, you're just not able to give women the frontline jobs. You barely see women in any leadership positions in any industry other than maybe financial services. And that really results in the fact that there is this disparity. Within that, if you cut it out and see like to like too, I think men are definitely paid higher than women in every sector. You mentioned entertainment industry, but I think in a lot of other sectors too, that disparity exists. Unfortunately, it's an ugly reality. I think a lot of corporations are today coming out and making statements that they're going to make this disparity disappear. But I think for me, the most important thing is that we need to nurture women. A lot of organizations have gender parity when they start off, but we just lose the women in mid-30s as they get to mid-level. And as a result, we just aren't able to see enough women in leadership positions. And that's really what bothers me the most.
Let me get Rituparna's take on it. Does this come from a space of, a deliberate choice that employers make? Because I'm wondering where it stems from. I find it, upsetting to actually think that in this day and age, there are employers who are on purpose saying that we will pay women less for the same job. How does it really work from the employer's end?
Thanks, Tamanna. Actually, agree with everything that my previous panelist had to say. But, I think what essentially is happening is there are two words which I'd like to introduce, and most of the conflict lies between these two words. One is confidence and second is competence. What we are seeing is, and one of the reasons that you're seeing the growing disparity when it comes to wages is because somehow over the years, employers have paid a higher premium for confidence as against competence. And I think somewhere women probably have been losing out on that. Goes without saying that somewhere the way women are being valued, and especially at workplace, there is a challenge. I'd like to share with you this recent study which Cantor did worldwide. It's a seminal study, and I'd urge everyone to probably take a look at it. It's a Reykjavik Index of Leadership, which they have started. In that study for India specifically, it shows that 39% of the people surveyed are comfortable seeing a woman leading the country, and about 34% are comfortable seeing a woman being a CEO and leading an organization. I think somewhere at the core of it is the way we value women and the value they bring to the workplace and the administration process. Of course, it stems from the fact that there are some social issues underlining, and I'm talking specifically for India. I do agree that women are not being nurtured equitably right from the time that they are born, and hence thinking about having women have a voice at the table sometimes seems like a far cry, given the reality or the stark reality that we are living in. So I think somewhere what is happening is some of the employers' decisions that we are witnessing, or the biases that we are witnessing, is where we see that employers are valuing confidence, which somehow probably men seem to exhibit far more explicitly than women, than them valuing competence. And I guess somewhere that is my justification. It's not a fair justification. It's completely,
but you know,
it's completely
Rituparna, I think we should
but
speak
I
frankly
feel
here.
this could be one of the reasons.
Yeah, but I think we should all speak frankly here. The fact is that when women exude the same confidence, it's not looked at as a positive. It becomes a negative.
Right.
In a lot of cases.
I completely agree. I think there are negative. Yeah, I think there are negative. When women are confident, it essentially gets viewed. And I'm again going by studies. It's not something where, as a woman, I'm just taking a stance. But I've seen that women's confidence is treated as an exhibition of excessive aggression, as somebody behaving contrary to the traits that a woman is expected to display, and so on and so forth. It's not necessary that women have to necessarily display those traits, but I guess even the slightest hint of aggression, speaking out, speaking aloud, does get deemed in a certain manner. I'm again not going to generalize. It doesn't happen in all workplaces, but it does happen in some.
Yeah, no. I mean, clearly things are changing, but the pace is too slow. If it's going to take 257 years to get equal pay, it's just too damn slow. Let me get Pranav Haldea in. Pranav, welcome to the conversation. You've put out a study which shows and echoes, in a sense, what Manisha was saying a little earlier, that the higher you go, the larger the pay gap actually becomes. And at executive director level, there's a huge sort of gap between what men and women are paid. Tell us more about this.
Hi, Tamanna. So firstly, thank you for inviting me to an all-women panel. I'm delighted to be a part of this. You're right. So we did this study on the basis of the filings made by companies for the financial year 2018-19. And we looked specifically at the executive directors who sit on the boards of listed companies. And what we found was very alarming. If one looks at the median pay, women as a whole were earning 45% lower than men at the executive director positions. In fact, what was even more alarming was that if I look at the last 3-year data, this gap seems to be widening. So it was at around 23% 2 years back, and it's now at 45%. What are the reasons for it? I think the other panelists also alluded to a few of the reasons behind this. One is right from the very beginning, just the nurture element which is there, wherein men, are encouraged more to be the breadwinners versus women. The other key reason also that we found is the number of women who end up taking a break because of maternity or because of childcare reasons. And when they do come back to the workforce, at that time, their pay is, based on when they had left off. So that contributes to, what I'm trying to say is that the tenure that they spend in the company also has an impact on that. And finally, what you've also traditionally seen is that there are lesser women who are in frontline roles. When I say frontline, which is primarily on, revenue generating sales roles. And that also plays a role in them earning lesser. But given that we're very close to Women's Day, I would like to extend this one step further, which is just apart from pay gap. Even if one looks at what number of positions women are holding at board levels as a whole, the findings are very alarming. So in 2013, if one were to just go back a bit in history, women only occupied about 5% of the total directorship positions across all listed companies. By combination of various regulations which SEBI has implemented, the first one being to have a woman on the board, and now what you're seeing, to have an independent director, woman director on the board as well. That number has gone up to about 17%, which is near the global average of about 20%. But it's still far lower than what ideally it should be. Of course, the other aspect to this is how the compliance has been met.
Yeah, no, but
we've done the study as well, and we found that in a lot of companies, it was actually relatives who appointed.
Yeah, some good points there, but I don't want to go all over the place. I want to come back to the reasons why, because like I said in the beginning, is this being done on purpose? Is it that those in positions to make these key decisions are men, and then they tend to prefer bringing men to the fore? And then you mentioned this whole thing about maternity leave, which is the big elephant in the room. So let's address it. Manisha Girotra, many will also say that if a woman is going to take a break, if an employee is going to take a break for whatever reason, and it could be to start a family, etc., then what can the company really do about it? You've taken a break, that's your life decision, and of course you will pay the price for it. I'm talking about what the large view is. Maybe it's too politically incorrect for people to say out loud, but this is how a lot of people think about it. I just want your take on it.
Yeah, I think you rightly said it, that the problem really is that all the leadership positions are with the men. And that's how the boys club think. They think that if the woman's taking a maternity leave, she's gone for 6 months, she comes back, there's a lag, in her work, and after that, is she going to be serious about the work hours, etc. The reality is that it's a ridiculous discussion. In today's day and age, when so much of the work can be done offline, from home, this mindset needs to change. And as I say to all the people at my organization, they say, women quit when they get married, or women quit when they have babies. Statistics show you that men quit jobs more than women do. If you back up a woman through her maternity leave, through her period where she looks after her old parents or her children when they're studying for board exams, they tend to remain far more fiercely loyal and productive. So I think we have to see it and treat careers as marathons and not as sprints. In our mind and in the boys club, all careers are seen for 3 to 5 years, maximum productivity for those 200%. And you're not nurturing women as leaders as a result of that. And as both the other panelists said, it's just a ridiculous discussion emanating from the fact that all the top jobs are led by men.
The other aspect to this is also the whole thing about 6 months maternity leave. When it became a Government of India mandate, I remember a lot of people arguing that this will cause employers to look at women even more discouragingly. You just will not want them on board. Rituparna, is there any way around this mindset?
Oh, if there was a way around, I would have loved to, of course, be at the spearhead that particular movement if possible. But I guess, first and foremost, I think this is a study that we ourselves had conducted within a year of that getting implemented, and the results were quite shocking. We did see that, leaving aside a certain pocket of progressive multinational organization, most of the other organizations, traditional, domestic, large Indian business houses, there was a bias which were creeping in, and I see that continuing in terms of hiring women for lateral positions, especially if you find that they are married and without a child. And I think those are practical. Of course, the government did it with good intentions, and I know that mothers need 6 months to kind of take care of their babies, but the thing is, India is the only country in the world where the burden of entire 6 months maternity pay was put on the woman's employer, and automatically triggering a commercial bias against women. And I feel that through policy making, that can be solved, that signaling, and I think that's the reason we did take it up with the government. In one of the labor codes recently, there is a reference of the government absorbing some of the cost, but I think the salary threshold googly that they've thrown again makes it inadequate because it's too less, and I think a working mother already earns far more than that. I think this is a particular challenge that we are dealing with, but I do have a different perspective. I do believe that we do need to figure out a way of ensuring that women, and I think one of the most shocking statistics is that since 2005 till now, women labor workforce participation have constantly come down, and it has come down more drastically in urban India than rural India, where the literacy and education level in urban India has actually gone up, which means women are making choices to stay at home. I don't know whether they're happy or not, but they definitely are content in making that choice and letting the husband be the bread earner. At some point, women have to make their presence felt, and in spite of odds, and I know there are odds, stay invested at workplaces, because until and it's a volume gain finally. Until and unless there are enough women in key positions of influence, whether it's at private sector companies, in government, in policy making, I see that the movement and progress which is happening, and I'm not denying that, would be sluggish.
No, so it also is a point of your income levels, isn't it? It's about whether it's worth going through all of that pain, having to balance everything if you are not going to get your due. And that comes back again, Manisha, let me get you in on this. It comes back to what you were saying. Even this whole maternity leave business and going to start a family business, actually that theory falls flat on the ground when you look at the data that Pranav is talking about at the executive director level, even at higher levels, when one assumes that you're starting the family phase is over. If you have such large pay disparities, when those concerns are no longer there, it shows it comes from an inbuilt bias, isn't it, Manisha? And that's the problem. If the pay scales are so tipped, it doesn't make sense for women to keep at it if they have a choice.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason, but I think part of the reason, as the other panelists said, is a very patriarchal structure of our society. A woman's job is seen as a job. It's something that enhances the income. As soon as the man's income gets sufficient, the woman's told you can now pull out and look after the children, the parents, the in-laws, etc. So I think it's a structural problem in our society where the male is seen as the one who goes out, earns the bread, and the woman's primary role is that of a nurturer and caregiver. And I think we're not being able to break through that. And as Rituparna said, that it's basically being reflected more in urban India. And I can tell you by all the conversations that I've had with my female colleagues who leave mid-career, it's because of the pressure at home. It's pressure from parents, it's pressure from in-laws, it's pressure from children. It's a guilt factor because your role is seen as that of a primary nurturer, and you just feel that time away from your children or your parents is a wrong thing to do. And I think that is so, the guilt is so inbuilt that women just tend to naturally quit. Of course, the fact that there is an income disparity, I'm sure adds to that argument, because the argument weakens if your income is just becomes such a small proportion to the male's income. So of course that adds to the argument, but I strongly feel that what needs to be changed is the mindsets at home.
I want to come in on solutions. As we wrap up this conversation, let's look at what people can do. I think one reason, Rituparna, for this gender gap is also people just don't know. Women possibly don't know that they're getting paid less for the same job. And most organizations would discourage that information getting out. So what really can women do to make sure that they're getting paid what they deserve for the same job?
I think this is, of course, a situation which is prevalent not just in India, but I've seen this happening all over the world. Somewhere, women somehow feel so grateful that they found themselves a job that they somehow tend to ignore the conversation on parity. And I actually think that it's not such a bad idea for women during the stage of interview to ask that question to the interviewer, that what would the wage levels for anyone else doing the same, or currently anyone else who's doing the same job, the wage levels would be at par with that. Now, one may not get an honest answer, but I think it does put employers on the guard and they become a little more cautious about it. And I think at some point of time, women have to let go their inherent fear, and I've noticed this, of doing negotiations around compensation and salary. Our ability to articulate the value that we bring to the table, because we tend to become overtly conscientious, overtly self-critical as well sometimes, and I think that keeps us from having honest conversations about what we deserve, honestly. And if one is able to have that conversation, we will see that there would be a change. I don't think overnight everything will become equal, but we would inching towards a more equitable situation when it comes to same job being done by a man and a woman. And we have to get to that stage. I think even I do tend to put more responsibility on women, because I think finally it's up to us to change the course and change the way forward for the rest of the women.
Pranav, we've been talking about, what the solutions really are, because at the end of the day, in a lot of jobs, and especially as experiences grow, it becomes a discretionary decision on who gets paid how much. It's a matter of negotiation between employer and prospective employee as well. And where do you bring in the factor that you want parity on basis of gender? How do you think women can ensure that they're getting paid what they deserve?
Well, I think one of the points which Rituparna had mentioned earlier, that about the confidence, I think just the fact that, instead of feeling guilty for having left the workforce for a while in the middle, for an equal job, there should be equal pay. In fact, even if you look at the top level executive positions or MD CEO positions, just about 4% of such positions are occupied by women. So what this automatically shows is that, as you grow to the top, there's not only is there a difference in the pay, but also, just from a filtering mechanism, very, very few women are able to reach the corner office, as you say. And I think, just to take this conversation a bit back to what we were talking of earlier, I think this starts off earlier at the middle management level, and we were talking about the maternity leave as well. I think a very good move would be to, and you already see this in other countries, that there should be an equal amount of paternity leave which is given as well. I think I've spoken to a lot of companies, and you have seen that a lot of bias has now come in because of the 6-month rule which has come in. And I think instead of making it 6 months, it would be a good idea in case there is an increase in the paternity leave instead.
Well, I don't know. The 6-month rule was based on, medical guidelines of how long an infant needs to be nursed, which is for 6 months. So, which has been the basis really of that rule. So I'm not sure if you can split it between mother and father. That apart, Manisha, as we wrap up, let's keep this solution oriented. What really can women do if they're in the workplace, if they're women watching this, if they're prospective employers watching this? How can we try and close that gap so we don't have to wait over 250 years for that equality?
So I think, look, the efforts have to be from both sides. Women, as Rituparna mentioned, need to lean in more, need to be a bit more aggressive. The reason women don't do it is because they worry that they're then seen as being too aggressive by the old boys club or too ambitious. And that's why they tend to shy away from having those discussions which boys have very easily. So I think, women need to probably join groups. There need to be independent training institutes. I know a lot is being done to train women for boards, but I think we need to do that through a career of the women. Women need to reach out to role models and mentors. So I think that's what women can do. But I think organizations, stakeholders, shareholders have to all embrace diversity as a way of life, because women can only do so much. The push has to come from the corporate. The corporate has to genuinely believe that if they want to build a sustainable organization, they need to have a more diverse organization. And I think only then will you see some of these discussions that we are having today become redundant.
Well, let's hope they become redundant sooner or later and we don't have to wait that long. Of course, there are flag bearers like some of who we have on the show today who are champions at slaying that old boys club and moving ahead. So thank you so much, Manisha Girotra, Rituparna Chakraborty and Pranav Haldea for joining us on the show today.